What's up, everybody? It's been a while since I've made a video, but I have a fairly cool thing that I'm excited to show you today. So I'm going to make a new folder on my MacBook here, and I'm going to call it my YouTube project. Okay, and I'm going to open that in VS Code. I'm going to trust the authors as I've just created it. Now we just have an empty kind of folder, right? But I'm going to do some really cool things now. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to an IBM using code for IBM obviously. And you're about to see we get this nice new notification shows up that says, is this workspace an IBM project? Well, I'm going to say yes. And what that does, it creates two default files. It creates the IBM JSON file, which is just our project configuration, and then also an environment file. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of things. I'm going to make this a repository. So I've just clicked initialize, and I'm going to make sure that my .env is in a git ignore. So I have to git ignore because I don't want to commit that file. You never want to commit your .env because it's specific to everybody. And I don't really have anything to change in my environment file, my project file quite yet. So I'll just say init commit. What I am going to do is create a couple of folders. I'm going to create Q RPGLE source. I'm also going to create Q RPGLE ref. And in my end file, I'm going to specify where I want objects to build and copy source to. So I'm going to just specify my own library right now, which is just Barry. And if I come over to the normal code for IBM browser, I actually have Barry in the object browser over here. Leave my library list up. I actually have it up here. It's got a lot of crap in it, but that's okay for now. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file in here, and I'm going to call it youtube.rpgle. Of course, it's going to be free format. Let's do some very basic stuff. Control Opt, casual default act group, star no. And I'm also going to declare a variable, character 20. And I'm going to say variable equals hello world. Pretty standard RPG program type work. And I'm just going to say display variable and then return. Now, of course, this is on my local machine, so I'm able to use the Git client that's built into VS Code to see changes. But what I'm actually wanting to show you now is that we can compile this from my local machine. Now, of course, I'm connected to an IBM, so it knows based on my configuration where to build it, where to compile it. You'll also notice that this project has its own actions that are specific to this project. So if I use the usual Command E here, it's going to show me the available options. So I'm just going to use my create bound RPG. And before I do that, I'd like you to see that inside of this alphabetical list, there is not a file or an object called YouTube. So I'm going to compile it. It compiled successfully and it automatically refreshed the list. So I'm actually expecting to find YouTube in this list somewhere. There it is, youtube.pugum right there, which is awesome. So I'm actually able to write code from my local machine and compile it. And of course, because of that, I get the Git integration as well. So I'm just going to say add new program, YouTube. I'm going to commit that there. Now, what I'm also going to do is create a second program. I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? Let's just call it display. Actually, we call do display.rpgle. This is going to be a very basic program. I'll do the usual stuff, act group star no, and I'll declare a program interface for this. Do display. It's going to take in a character or text, which is going to be character 50, and that'll do. And then we'll just do a display text and a return. Really basic program. Let's compile that. Cool. So that compiled too. If we go back to the object browser, it's going to refresh itself and do display right there. Awesome. Next up, I'm going to create a ref file for a prototype. So do display dot rpgleh. So it's going to be star free. And actually, if you notice that the syntax highlighting isn't showing up because of this new extension type, well, you can say configure file association, you can search for the language, and now it will show up, which is awesome. But this will be my prototype for my do display ext pugum do display, like so. It takes in, I'm just going to end the PR as well. It takes in a text of character 50, and that's pretty much it for that. Now what I'm going to do is come back over to my YouTube program, and I'm going to copy it in, copy qrpgle ref, do display. If you're wondering what all these suggestions are, by the way, I actually have GitHub Copilot enabled, so I'm just going to disable that for a minute, and all stuff stops showing up. Anyway, so I brought in do display, which is awesome. So now I actually am able to prompt on that, do display, pass in my variable, like so, save it, and run it and compile it. Well, that actually failed. So what is the reasoning for that? So it says the type and the attributes of parameter 1 do not match. Well, that's quite obvious because our do display prototype over here takes in character 50. So what I'm going to do is actually define the length that we need to use. So I'll just use a constant for that. Text length 50. And of course we can use that over here. So I'll just say text length. And I'll do the same. And actually should just do it. And I'll do the same in there as well. So now if I save and compile again, we actually get a compiled successfully. Now what happened there is when I initiated the compile, it actually brought up any of the dependencies that I referenced in the code. So, you know, I'm referencing qrpgle source do display. So it's actually going to go ahead and bring that dependency up when I'm, you know, at compile time and build it. Now we can see this by going to the output tab, switching over to IBM output. If we scroll all the way to the top of the spool file, this very large spool file, you'll see here uploading 3 files. So it's going to upload all of the required pieces of code. Now, bear in mind, it only runs the compile command against the one that we actually compiled. So it's only running create bound RPG against YouTube. It's not running it against all of them. Anyway, that is the cool thing that I'm working on right now. The ability to run and develop code locally on the local machine and then compile on the remote system. It's very similar to an iProject in RDI, except it's in VS Code, I suppose, and it's very easy to configure. So that's pretty neat. So I'm just going to make my commit, you know, add do display program. And I guess I'll just do one more thing, and I'll make one more quick change where we'll take the length down of do display. So we'll just change it to 25, compile that, of course, and then come over to here, change that to 25, and then recompile my YouTube program and have that run as well. And we can just do a little commit there, change length of do display, and there we go. That's pretty much it. So that's what I'm working on right now. Yeah, thanks for watching.